Hello, welcome to our next week of online learning. So this is the week of April 20th, and we're going to continue our discussion of quadratics. And we are going to be talking about, sorry, went too fast. We're going to be talking about completing the square. So let's talk about what that looks like. So the first thing I want to do is look at this equation. If x squared plus bx plus c equals y, what's the relationship between b and c in the following equation? So it may not be really obvious at first, so I'm going to kind of walk you through this one. So let's identify b, and b would be 20 and c would be 100. So we just look up at our top equation and see where b and c are located. So I can look at 20 and 100 and I can try to find a relationship between there, but I'm going to show you what that relationship is. If I take half of b, so half of 20, I get 10. Then if I square that 10, I get 100, and that gives me c. So that was half of b, and then square it to get c. Now let's look at another one and see if it's true for this one. So now I have x squared minus 14x plus 49. And I said that equals 0. So now I want to know, does that relationship hold? Well, b is negative 14 and c is 49. So let's take half of b and then square it and see if we get c. Well, half of b, so half of 14, negative 14 is negative 7. And then when I square negative 7, I get 49. Now, remember, if you're going to square a negative number in your calculator, you have to put it in parentheses, or else it's going to give you a negative 49. So please make sure when you're squaring negatives on your calculator, you're using parentheses, because it makes all the difference. All right, well, why is that important? Well, as we work through completing the square and this lesson and the next lesson, you'll see how that's going to help us be able to factor and solve quadratics. So, but for today, all I really want to look at is just finding that c value if I know b. So let's look at kind of put that into terms of what it looks like mathematically. So this is called completing the square. So to complete the square for any quadratic expression of the form x squared plus bx, you're going to add b over 2 squared to the expression so that you get x squared plus bx plus the quantity b over 2 squared. And that just gives me that c value. I'm just trying to find what that c is that I need to add to it. And so that's all we're looking at today, just that first part. So here's our first example. Find the value of c that makes x squared plus 10x plus c a perfect square. All right, well, let's look at b. B is, let's remember that c is b divided by 2 squared. Well, b is 10, and I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it. Well, when I divide 10 by 2, I get 5. So I end up with c equals 5 squared. Well, 5 squared is just 5 times 5, and that gives me 25. So what I have to add to that is 25. So I would get x squared plus 10x plus 25. So that c value needs to be 25. Example 2, pretty similar, except b is 16 this time. So I know that c is b divided by 2 squared. So b is 16 divided by 2, and then I'm going to square that. Well, 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I have 8 squared. And when I do 8 squared, or 8 times 8, I get 64. So c has to be 64. Let's look at the next example. Find the value of c that makes x squared plus 3x plus c a perfect square. Well, b is 3. I know that c equals b over 2 squared. So I have 3 over 2 squared. Well, that looks a little messy because I can't really divide 3 by 2, but I'm just going to use decimals. So this is, I'm switching kind of from leaving things as fractions to decimals. And 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. You can check that on your calculator. So I end up with 1.5 squared. Well, if I do 1.5 squared on my calculator, or 1.5 times 1.5, I get 2.25. So C is going to be 2.25. Example 4. Find the value of C that makes x squared minus 8x plus C a perfect square. Same process. C equals b over 2 squared. Well, b is negative 8 this time, so it's negative 8 divided by 2, which is negative 4. So I get C equals negative 4 squared. Well, remember, that's negative 4 times negative 4, and that gives me positive 16. So even though B started out negative, my C is still going to be positive. So for every one of these problems, C should always be positive. Okay, example 5. Find the value of C that makes x squared minus 24x plus C a perfect square. Okay, well, B is negative 24, and I know C equals B divided by 2 squared. So I have negative 24 divided by 2 squared. Well, negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. So I have negative 12 squared. So C equals negative 12 squared. Well, negative 12 squared is negative 12 times negative 12. Again, be careful if you put that in your calculator, it has to have parentheses around it. And you get C equals 144. Example 6. Find the value of C that makes x squared minus 15x plus C a perfect square. All right, well, C equals B divided by 2 squared. B is negative 15, so I have negative 15 divided by 2 squared. Again, 2 doesn't go into 15 evenly, so I'm going to use a decimal. So I get negative 7.5. When I divide negative 15 by 2, I get negative 7.5, and I'm going to square that. So again, make sure you're putting parentheses in your calculator if you're using it. If you're just doing negative 7.5 times negative 7.5, make sure you have your negative on both of them. And when you do the math, you get 56.25. So C equals 56.25. This is all I'm going to have you practice today. So there is not an ALEKS assignment for this one. There is a Google Form assignment. So it's on Google Classroom right after this video. So you're just going to go in and do that assignment. You're just finding C. So all you're going to put in for your answer. So if you had this problem on the Google form that you're going to be filling out, you would put 56.25 as your answer. You're not going to put C equals, just put the number 56.25, and then it will grade it correctly for you that way. Okay, so now I'm going to let you practice some of them. There are 10 problems on a Google form. And then the next lesson is going to talk about what do we do with this completing the square to help us solve quadratics. So have a good day. Do this assignment, and then you can watch the next video, which will be this week as well, on how to use completing the square to solve quadratics. So have a nice day, stay safe, and get your work done.